The part of C.C. Capwell is now being played by Charles Bateman.
You know, I've practically stopped coming down here altogether.
Hello, welcome back to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
This is week 13, and the first episode of the week is episode 61 for our original air date,
Kelly Club,
October 22nd, 1984.
Tattoos of Joe and Kelly. Full chest tattoos, one on the right.
Now, Cruz is talking to Dave
Robin
on
Wright.
his mini TV.
Dave
So, Dave
Forever.
is his, sounds like his boss,
I
I
get some
think,
mock-ups
in the
next time.
CIA or whatever.
Could you just call me Sally?
Some kind of a
contact.
Sally and
anyway.
I.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Sally Taylor and I.
And
That's
he
the
tells
funny
Cruz that they've discovered that someone stole
I
a
know.
Russian
Well, I'm not a
plane
physicist.
and ditched it off the Santa Barbara coast. So that's what
Has to
everyone's
do with
after.
Yeah.
Crisis.
And he says, "Don't let us down." See, that's what makes me think this is boss. Don't
Yeah.
let us down after you almost blew the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And Cruz says that was the Capwell girl.
So I'm assuming that refers to Eden,
Mm-hmm.
and they've just sort of skirted around that a little in their conversations. But it sounds like she jeopardized one of Cruz's previous missions.
Mm-hmm. So I hope we get to hear more about that at some
Yeah,
point.
that should be interesting.
And Cruz mentions that Lionel Lockridge is also doing some kind of underwater surveillance as well, but he thinks that has to do with a boat and not a plane.
Yeah. Although it's possible maybe Lionel will come across a plane.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe Lionel actually knows about the plane and this other thing is a cover for...
Yeah. We
Salvaging the
don't
plane.
quite know what
We don't.
Lionel's got up his sleeve.
We don't know what kind of international contacts he has.
Yeah, that's true.
Now Santana comes to visit Cruz
Mm-hmm.
and says that Brandon and Gina were sent off somewhere by Cece.
Mm-hmm.
And she tells him that she broke up with Cece, and he says he should just leave it alone for a while,
Yeah.
which is, of course, the opposite of what she wants to do. I don't know if he's just, because he's so in the middle of this spy plane thing, he thinks if he could just maybe delay her a bit until he gets that out of the way, he can help her.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he's got two things at once to worry about.
Yeah, you can only do so much, and with Joe needing help, and apparently as a job at Capwell Industries too.
Mhm. So she refuses to, leave it alone. This is pretty much what Cece's been telling her.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that she's asking for trouble, and she storms out.
Yeah.
Then Santana goes to visit Summer
Mm-hmm.
to try to find out where Gina is, but Summer doesn't know either.
Yeah.
And then Cece and Cruz meet up, and Cece says Cruz doesn't need to worry, he's seen to things. So Cece says that Santana found out that Brandon is her son,
Mm-hmm.
and Cruz says that she didn't hear from him.
Mm-hmm.
But Cece says that he sent them both away to keep them away from Santana, he specifically says, and also to keep them away from Stockman's creditors.
Mm.
So there was talk about something just went awry in a financial deal
Yeah.
before Stockman died, and so Gina made this. This is part of the reason Cece got her to sign a power of attorney,
Right.
Or so he claims, because there was some big issue with his finances.
That's right.
Of course, we don't, maybe Cece's actually one of these creditors. And
Well,
they've
CC
figured
might
out
be,
some kind of
be
scheme.
behind all that,
to
just to get that
Stockman's money.
power of attorney. You
Mhm.
never know.
So yeah, maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
So after talking to CC, Cruz thinks he changes his mind and decides he will help Santana
Mm-hmm.
to find Gina. I guess he's kind of turned off by the way CC just said, "Oh, I've sent them away to hide them from Santana."
Yeah. Yeah.
So just as Mason, just as Cruz is leaving, Mason arrives,
Mm-hmm.
and Cruz says, "Oh, what a shame I can't stay."
Yeah.
Mason wants to celebrate because he thinks he may have Peter Flint out of his life. But, we're expecting Santana to blow him off, but he suggests dinner, and she says that she'd be indebted to him if he could help her find Gina.
Yeah.
So Mason still doesn't know why Santana's interested in Gina, but he's got some pieces from before, so I think, there's a potential of Mason putting things together. But interesting that Santana kisses him on the cheek, and don't know, now that she's not with Cece, maybe she might develop a real interest in Mason, or
yeah, I felt she was a little bit more strategic in this encounter with Mason than she was in the last one, where they were both genuinely having a very bad day and were kind of leaning on each other. Today, I think she's, as I say, a little more strategic. I think she's kind of thinking about the possibilities of having Mason a little bit closer to her. Obviously, his legal experience, or power, whatever power he has in the DA's office, could be very helpful to her in finding and maybe even getting some access to her child. And plus, he is a Capwell, and she knows he's not getting along very well with his dad. So there's also possibilities there. And maybe she is genuinely developing a bit of affection for him as well.
I mean, she'd known him for years, and in the recent times when she was rebuking his advances, she was already planning to get with Cece. And I think there was no way she could even leave a glimmer of a hope for Mason, because that would mess everything up, or he'd get in the way. So we can't really know how Santana feels about Mason until we see, what she does next, I guess.
I have to say, with this new recast Cece, it's a much older actor playing the character, and the character is a little bit different. He's kind of wearing a cardigan and just has a more sort of grounded sort of energy than the previous incarnations that were zapping around in a plane and sort of speeding around in a car.
That's something we totally forgot to mention at the start, that Cece Capwell was recast in this episode.
That's right. So it's a different actor, an older actor.
Charles Bateman has got completely white hair, so even if he's not older, he immediately looks older than the previous Cece.
Yes, that's right. And is, it's interesting how each actor kind of puts their own spin on the character, and this one seems more like an establishment figure to me. He's not wearing the slick aviator glasses, as I say. He's kind of wearing a cardigan. So to me, this new incarnation, the romance between Santana doesn't make as much sense as it did with the other two.
It seems like that whole romance with Santana started and ended really with in the Paul Burke era.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a way to segregate that from.
That's right.
From Cece. So I guess we were trying to decide whether Paul Burke had actually played the role less than Andrew Laird. What's his name? Peter Mark Richmond. I think it's pretty close.
I think you calculated it was one episode less or something like that.
I can check that. Later.
Yeah.
So, so you had previously guessed that John Perkins
would
be the first person to leave, and then we kind of said, well, technically Sally left, but she wasn't really on the show. We didn't even know
still don't
she was
know much
back.
about the actress who played the first incarnation.
So it was Paul Burke who left. So we'll be doing a spotlight on Paul Burke this week.
All right. Well, I did guess an older male actor. Just not the right one.
So who's your guess for the next person to leave?
Oh, well, I wonder if it could be a recast, I don't know, even Santana, I suppose, or it could be one of the Perkins, maybe. But it also seems to me like Summer doesn't have much to do, so I don't know.
We'll see. The $5 is still on the line.
It didn't really give you a definitive answer. I don't know.
And actually, Paul Burke was last seen in Thursday's episode, so there was no CC in Friday's episode. So there was actually only about 2 days with the whole cast, with Brick, Amy, and Paul Burke still playing CC, during which that cast photo could have been taken that we talked about.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. And the next cast photos I can find, I think, are Christmas-based. So I'll try and find a full cast photo of the Christmas, which is about 2 months away in Santa Barbara time.
Yeah.
So Cece tells Eden of Santana's plan to move the gazebo. So I think this gazebo thing is moving ahead. And I remember people hanging out in the gazebo. So I think it's going to be refurbished and I guess moved closer. They encounter the Lockridges at that barbed wire fence that Kelly cut herself on a few weeks ago. The Lockridges they brought Brick over because now he's a gardener too, I guess.
He kind of does everything now, I think.
Yeah, and they're trying to figure out what they can plant to completely block their view of the gazebo. And they say so to Eden and Cece. Lionel and Eden pretend never to have met and allow Cece to introduce them to each other.
Yeah.
Augusta doesn't seem to see anything. I mean, they play it really cool, so there's nothing suspicious at all there.
They don't introduce Brick, but Eden is obviously kind of interested in his presence. I thought it was really fun to see another part of the property where the two houses come together. So we've already seen the alley between the two houses where Kelly was jogging that day and ran into Augusta. We've seen, I guess, one of the back parts where Kelly was riding her horse and saw Joe with Augusta. So now this is apparently another part of the Lockridge property that abuts with the Capwell property.
And Lionel mentions, actually, that he thought that the feud between the families might be coming to an end.
Yeah.
Maybe he was thinking of, Ted and Lakin. But that's all changed now that he's stolen that land from them.
That's right. Yeah.
And he says, he tells them to watch the news that night, because some things are about to be revealed. So, Cece's thinking, why should we watch the news?
Yeah.
So one thing I was going to ask a couple of days ago, but I didn't get around to it, was what are your thoughts on potential love interests for Brick?
Oh, well, he and Amy seem to be quite interested in each other. So that's one they're sort of teasing already. But then again, Jade was kind of interested in him as well. So that's another potential.
And someone was teasing Brick, was it Augusta? Teasing Brick about when he was watching the Perkins family. Oh, which one are you interested in? So.
Now, as I say, Eden was kind of giving him an interesting look, I thought, during this scene. So that might be something down the road, I suppose. So those are my top 3 candidates right now. Now, this being a soap opera, no, this being a soap opera, if he hangs around long enough, they could, if you look at Days of Our Lives, they've all had relationships with each other. So, who knows?
All right, I'll keep a watch on that.
Yeah.
So Brick and Amy end up having a picnic on a stump just near that part of the property. I think Augusta brings her in, or someone brings Amy to that spot where they're hanging out, and the rest leave, and Brick and Amy stay there. They're talking. She mentioned she's a photographer and a bookkeeper and something else, and Brick says that Minx mentioned she might be looking for a bookkeeper. So this might be a way to keep tying the Perkinses in with the other families, since the murder plot is really the only thing that kind of linked them.
Yeah.
So Eden then watches Lionel's interview on TV, and he's talking to an interviewer. They're out looks like out on the beach, talking about that he's going to dive the Amanda Lockridge and look for those lost paintings. The first thing she says, which is the first thing everyone thought of, is, after 100 years, won't the water have destroyed the paintings?
Yeah, obviously.
So, and Lionel says, well, from the imaging that we took of the ship, it looks like it's at an angle and there might be an air pocket. So this is a believable story. And that there's also indications that the paintings had been wrapped in wax. So, yeah, maybe the Lockridges will find some valuable paintings that can refurbish their fortune.
Well, I mean, I guess that is a possibility. It seems quite far-fetched to me, and I really still have a feeling that Lionel has a little bit more up his sleeve than that. I don't know, and because even if that was all on the up and up, I would be interested to know why he views this as being such a threat to the Capwells.
Well, he did say the captain's log might reveal that another important Santa Barbara family, whose names he won't mention, may have caused the sinking of the Amanda Lockridge. And of course, Cece's watching with Eden and says, you know, clearly he's talking about us. And then he also wonders why Lionel has started this dive now, of all times.
Yeah.
So Lionel must have some other another thing in his sights other than just the paintings. So, if you recall, Kelly was in the presidential suite, and Peter had grabbed the master key and his gun, and he bursts into the suite, bursts into the bedroom. Kelly's alone in the bed, sleeping. So not quite what we had predicted. We had predicted they'd both check out, had checked out. And Peter is ranting and raving and waving the gun around, looking in all the closets and everywhere, shouting, "Where is he? Where is he?" And she says, "There's no one here." And of course, he knows there was, because he heard Kelly talking to him. And he can't reveal anything that he knows without revealing the mirrors. So he keeps saying, "Oh, the staff reported hearing a man's voice in here. And the staff said there was a man in here with you." And Kelly really is 100%, I wouldn't say guilty, but she's, she was with Joe.
Yeah.
But she gets extremely upset with Peter and says, "This is the reason I don't want to be engaged to you," and gives back his ring. So she leverages this as a very believable excuse to just break off the engagement with Peter. So this actually worked out well. But
because we know she was planning to do that. Anyway.
Yeah, so this has really kind of made it very easy for her to do it and kind of make Peter think that he triggered it. And of course she can still pretend Joe's dead for a while. And Peter's still waving the gun around, and she finally tells him to put it away, and he shoves it in his pants. So Peter storms out, because obviously he knows there was a guy there. And then Kelly goes to the barn where Joe is, and tells him the whole thing, and says Peter's angry all the time, and that she's getting scared of him. And she also says it wouldn't be fair to stay with Sally, with the potential that someone could be trying to harm Kelly. So
yeah, and I think this will come up a bit later, but she does actually look into some good options for Sally too. Yeah.
So the next time we see Sally, then, and Kelly's in the shower, and Sally hears Kelly whistling happily. And when she comes out, she wonders why Kelly's so happy when Joe's just died. Kelly does not really give her the real answer, but she suggests to Sally, "Hey, remember that beach house we looked at a few months ago? Why don't you move there?" And this is a really hilarious suggestion. She's just moved in with Sally, and now she's suggesting Sally leave this place that she may have known and loved for years.
Takes a certain amount of moxie. I mean, we know all of the reasons behind it, and we know why Kelly's so anxious to get her out, and that it's in many ways for Sally's own good, because her life might be in danger. But it is kind of interesting, and it's interesting that Kelly doesn't think of moving her and Joe to the beach house.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. So Sally, being the shipper of Joe and Kelly that we remember from the first Sally, says, "Yeah, I'm ready to move there." She's like, "Whatever Kelly Capwell wants, I will do." So yeah,
we did get a little sense though that this beach house is in a nicer area.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's not like Kelly's going to pay for it though. So.
Yeah, but it is, considered. I guess it's for Sally, it is a step up in terms of location. But yeah, whether it's as cheap as the place she's in is another matter.
So Dominic is sitting in front of the mirror, growling about how much she hates Lionel Lockridge. Phone rings. Kelly wants a meeting. So they go and meet at the warehouse. And Kelly is a bit angry with Dominic.
Yeah.
Pretends Joe's still dead and says, if it weren't for you, Joe and I would have been happily married these last 5 years.
Yeah.
And Dominic says, I was guilty when he went to jail, and I'm doubly guilty now that he's dead. And Dominic agrees to come forward to the police to clear Joe's name posthumously.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting twist because, unless the police are fooled by the beard, they clearly will want to do some research into who this person is coming forward. Certainly Mason will.
Yeah, and, this story that Dominic has created, I think would be quite easy to check. I mean, no one with the resources to really check it has checked it so far. I mean, I'm sure Joe did what he could to look into it, but someone who has access to all the records, who could, for example, check pilot's licenses to see if there is a Dominic with a pilot's license.
Well, maybe when Dominic got the pilot's license, she set up a very elaborate backstory that checked out with them, and that may still be...
It's possible.
Might still check out.
It is a pretty fake-looking outfit, though.
Yeah, Cece was fooled. Santana possibly was fooled. So back at the future Kelly Capwell's house, or apartment, Sally's sitting there, dreaming about Kelly and Joe's love, as we all do. And Warren Lockridge calls, asking for Kelly. Mm-hmm. So I think he's probably trying to scope out when Kelly's not going to be home so he can break into there. And Sally hears the shower and assumes Kelly's taking a second shower. And so takes the message from Warren and hangs up just as the shower stops. And out of the shower comes Joe.
Yeah, so now Sally's in on the secret.
Sally knows Joe's love. And she promptly faints, like Mr. Bottoms with a camel.
There's some very easily...
It may be that she had a lot of dreams in high school of Joe Perkins coming out of her shower, so this may be half Joe is alive, half my dreams come true. So, by the way, Sally and I are starting a Joe and Kelly fan club. We're going to get matching tattoos.
Joe and Kelly forever.
Mason shows Veronica Ginger's mugshot. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff on there. So Mason leaves, and Peter comes in, and Veronica asks if he's going to be writing any more checks, because Mason is coming back in a few minutes. And that she's seen Ginger's mugshot. And then Mason arrives and says he hopes none of his $50,000 went to Ginger. I think he probably knows she's the one blackmailing Peter. Mm-hmm. And Peter does a similar thing that he did with Kelly regarding Augusta previously. He says, "Oh yeah, she told me about her past once, I think." Mm-hmm. So, he kind of plays it down. Says he knew, but whatever. And as soon as Mason leaves, he writes himself another check. And then he puts that into his briefcase with his gun. And calls Ginger for a meeting, but says, "We can't meet in my office anymore. Mason's watching me." So he wants to meet her at the corner of Anacapa and Santa Barbara. So I'm thinking maybe he plans to kill her with that gun.
Maybe.
He's got the check just in case he changes his mind or she brings too many.
I would have thought Mason would have Peter followed.
That's a good point, yeah. Maybe he is, so Mason may see Peter and Ginger on that corner now.
It also, it does occur to me, as it's occurred to me many times in watching this, that no one really seems to have done a very thorough job in investigating Peter and not sort of uncovering these aspects of his past. I mean, Ginger seems to be a better investigator than Mason in finding him.
Mm-hmm. Between Ginger and Dominic,
yeah,
didn't really
yeah,
do enough research.
Considering Mason has the resources of the entire Santa Barbara Police Department behind him, plus all of the resources of Capwell Industries and unlimited quantities of money. He really hasn't tried very hard to find out who Peter really is.
Well, he's got a lot of data available.
Mm-hmm.
He just needs to go down the right path with his research. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he starts investigating Ginger, he may find a thread that leads him back to Peter.
Yeah. Because I would think Peter would have some kind of record. I'm sure his fingerprints would be in the system.
So that was about it for this episode. We've wrapped up another storyline, which is Kelly plus Peter, which probably started in 1979. Definitely giving back the ring, that ends it for both of them, I would think.
Yeah.
But Peter's got a lot more things to worry about than that.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll have to see where things go with Kelly and Joe.
Yeah.
What happens with this whole Russian storyline? Does that go anywhere? We haven't seen the Russians for a while. So that'll be interesting. And of course, we got to find out what's going on with Dominic.
And so, what was your guess for who's the next person to leave the show?
My guess, I'm going to say Summer, and that's based on the fact that we looked at that photo and you didn't remember who she was, so it makes me think that she's not around very long.
All right, $5 on Summer for the win. All right, we will see you in a few minutes. For us, a day after we watch episode 62 of Santa Barbara.
See ya.
This week's spotlight is on Paul Burke, who played C.C. Capwell, number 3, on Santa Barbara. Paul Raymond Burke was born on July 21, 1926, in New Orleans, Louisiana, to Santa Maria Palermo and prizefighter and nightclub owner Martin Burke. Burke was educated at prep schools, where he was drawn to acting. He moved to Hollywood in the 1940s, where he trained at the Pasadena Playhouse. Burke has been married to Peggy Pryor and Lynn Peters. His children include Paula, Paul, Dina, and a stepson, Carl. His granddaughter is Aliyah Shawkat, who plays Maybe Funke on Arrested Development. His early screen appearances include uncredited roles in several 1951 movies, and then a mix of TV and film throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, such as The Lone Ranger, Highway Patrol, Dragnet, The Adventures of Superman, Men into Space, Hawaiian Eye, Ironside, Macmillan and Wife, Charlie's Angels, Hawaii Five-0, The Love Boat, and Fantasy Island. His best-known role is Adam Flint on Naked City, which he played for 99 episodes from 1960 to 1963. Beginning with episode 34, Burke appeared in 21 episodes of Santa Barbara as C.C. Capwell, taking over for Peter Mark Richmond, who had been cast temporarily after Lloyd Bochner was unable to continue in the role. After Santa Barbara, Burke appeared in shows such as Hotel, Cagney and Lacey, and Columbo. He is best known to 1980s audiences as the increasingly erratic Congressman,
ex-Congressman
Neil McVeigh, on Dynasty. Burke died on September 13, 2009, at the age of 83, in Palm Springs, California.
Get out of my sight, you miserable has-been.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We've watched episode 62 of Santa Barbara, originally aired October 23rd, 1984. Sally tells Joe that Warren is coming over. This is after she recovers from having fainted.
Yes.
She's very happy Joe's alive and tells him she's moving thanks to Kelly's suggestion. She says, now I know why she wanted this place all to herself.
She's very happy with the idea that she can accommodate Joe and Kelly in any way. She doesn't really ask anything about moving dates or logistics or whether Joe's going to help her carry her sofa or anything like that.
She's just over the moon by the whole thing.
Yeah.
About the whole thing. Cruz comes for a visit, and Joe tells him a bunch of stuff about the case, but also that the Russians rescued him. So this is really interesting to Cruz.
Yeah.
He describes a couple of the two Russians he met. So he mentions the names that he heard. So I don't know if Cruz doesn't let on as to whether or not he recognizes them, or even that he cares that much.
He also describes, as best he can, some of the electronic equipment he's seen. So he makes it very clear to Cruz that there's something more going on. He tells him that they were pretending to be tourists, but he knew that there was something more going on than that.
So it was more on the ball than he lets on.
Yeah, exactly.
And he says they think they know who robbed the Capwells and therefore have a prime suspect for the murder.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in another warehouse, Peter pulls a gun on Ginger, but she was waiting for it, and her thug comes up behind him with his own gun raised. So
A bigger gun
for that attempt.
Yeah.
He says they might as well kill him because he has nothing left. She decides she would rather have the money than kill him. So he goes to work to write another check from the magic checkbook, but Mason pulls the pen from his hand and says, nope, that's it. You no longer have authority to write checks on this account, and if you don't account for every penny you took within the next 48 hours, you're going to go to jail. Kelly is with Dominic, and she mentions knowing that Dominic is a woman, when wondering why Dominic didn't come forward before. This freaks Dominic out, and Dominic says she's changed her mind about going to the police and runs out.
And this is quite an amusing scene, actually, because not just in this scene, but when Kelly's talking about it later, there just seems to be this absolute shock and astonishment that Dominic is actually a woman. And who could have ever known this? And of course, anyone who's watched the show can pretty much tell right away. It's pretty obvious the beard is fake. You can see the glue all over it. So this is where we have to suspend our disbelief a little bit.
The beach was more realistic than Dominic's beard.
Yeah.
So she goes home to tell Joe. It also tells Joe that Dominic's eyes look familiar to her. So what do you think that means?
Well, I have come to believe fairly firmly that Sophia is the most probable candidate for Dominic. I suppose an outside chance might be the mysterious Pamela, who everyone is looking for. But it really seems to me that it is Sophia. So, especially given Sophia's acting background. So, if that's true, then the eyes would be very familiar to Kelly because they are her mother's eyes.
So, the Taylor household is just a round robin of visitors today. John comes to visit and asks Joe to forgive him, and they hug.
Yeah.
Joe says, oh, you know what, you and Mom should get back together.
Yeah.
Then Joe tells Kelly not to give Warren his coin back because they're still going to need it for evidence. Warren comes over and he basically asks her for the coin back, says, oh yeah, it's from my collection, I was going to give it to someone. And Kelly just says, oh, sure, I can give it to you next time I'm back at the mansion, that's where I left it. It's in the safe. So Warren, doesn't play off being too agitated about it, just does come up with some reasons why he's anxious to get it back and worried that it's unattended, at the mansion because it's so valuable.
Yeah.
As soon as he leaves, Kelly tells Joe, well, Warren lied to me because I know he didn't have a coin collection from Lakin, and he pretended that was part of his collection. So I think they think they're onto something with Warren.
And Warren's mannerisms, ever since the coin came into the story, have been kind of getting a little bit more anxious. You know, when we first met Warren, he was kind of this brash beach bum, wasn't taking life very seriously. And now every time we see him, he's either kind of a mean drunk, or he's kind of shifting around, looking very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. We're setting things on fire.
We're setting things on fire.
So Peter visits next. He apologizes to Kelly
Mm-hmm.
and says, so should we be engaged again? No, I think you should find someone else.
Yeah.
So,
And I think this is probably, I mean, there's probably many reasons he would very much like this relationship to continue. But I don't think the least of these reasons is the fact that he's now in this terrible position where Ginger's demanding money and Mason's going to prosecute him if he writes any more checks, and he has to pay back all the money. So, you know, the first place to look would be Kelly, but he has to make up with her first.
Warren goes to tell Augusta that Kelly pretended she didn't have the coin.
Mm-hmm. So he
both
knows.
Kelly and Warren know that the other one was lying.
Yeah.
Augusta asks for Kelly's address so she can talk to her. So I'm visiting Augusta in a stocking cap, sneaking in there late at night, trying to steal the coin. I imagine Warren doing the same thing. Perhaps they'll run into each other.
Yeah, that'll be funny.
Amy has an interview with Minx over the bookkeeper job.
Mm-hmm.
Augusta introduces her to Warren, but he says he remembers her from the State Street restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the name of that place that we knew wasn't La Mesa. It was kind of a bar and restaurant. Now, I remember a place called the State Street Bistro from when I used to watch it, but I don't remember what it looked like. And that looks pretty much like a bar with one table.
That,
so
it's
not very
look
bistro unless it expands further into the back.
Maybe they do a reno at some point.
So maybe when we do see the State Street Bistro, it actually won't be the same place, but State Street being the main street that runs through Santa Barbara.
But I have to say, poor Amy, she's got this job interview. She's been having some difficulty finding work, and here she is at this job interview, and she's getting a lot of grief all around, trying to even just get up to see Minx. You know, Augusta doesn't approve of her and is making catty comments. You know, Warren's being his twitchy self.
And Augusta finds out that Brick set up the interview.
Yeah.
She thinks there may be something nefarious going on to get Minx's money. You know?
Yeah. And Brick's giving her all this advice, which, you know, about how not to be afraid of Minx and just stand up for herself. And, you know, that's not necessarily the type of thing you need to hear when you're going into a job interview. So.
Right. Yeah. He didn't mention a riding crop, so...
No, and sadly we didn't get to see Minx. I would have really liked to have seen her.
I think she wasn't there yesterday either, I don't think, when they were setting this up, so... when Amy gets home, she tells her parents she didn't think the interview went well. And also asks if their parents are getting back together. Marissa lets John stay over for the night. So I think they're probably going to get back together.
I think so, yeah.
After Mason takes Santana to lunch, they immediately start talking about going to dinner. And he says, you know, if you thought lunch was great, dinner's going to be amazing. Anyway, when he leaves, she closes the door and rolls her eyes and sighs. So I think she's not interested in Mason.
No, I think we did a couple episodes ago see a genuinely warm moment between them when they were both having a bad day. But I think that's past, and I think for Santana, her interest in Mason at this point is as a conduit to get to Brandon. And Mason, as ever, is still very interested in Santana as a prospective partner, but we're seeing now that that's probably not reciprocated by Santana.
So we see Mason has a detective, which I don't know if it's a private detective or one civil servant, but he's got the detective out searching for his mother.
Mm-hmm.
He then gets Peter's key to Peter's apartment from Veronica. He then tells Cece he's interested in Gina romantically, and Cece approves heartily of this. I guess, he figures that the Stockman's money, could maybe end up getting merged with the Capwell money someday if Mason and Gina get together. They're about the same age, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know if I misheard this, or if Charles Bateman is still memorizing names, or if he was kind of mumbling. But it sounded like at one point he says, Gina's still recovering. Those hours when Brendan was missing were quite stressful, and she's still recovering from Stockton's death. So I heard Brendan and Stockton instead of Brandon and Stockman, but maybe that was just me. So
yeah.
Mason goes to Santana and tells her the good news,
Mm-hmm.
and she kisses him on the lips, and then he asks for another one. She just gives him a hug.
Yeah.
But he says, sadly, he can't go to dinner with her because he has to deal with Peter.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's planning to wrap things up with Peter that night.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he leaves, Santana makes a plane reservation for Nice. So she will be tracking down Gina. Mason starts to search Peter's room. He apparently has a warrant, because when he knocks, it says he has a warrant. No one's there, lets himself in. And then calls Veronica right away, and Veronica says, you better get out of there, because Peter left quite a while ago and he's on his way. So Mason doesn't have a chance to actually look for anything.
Yeah.
But he hides out in the hallway, and maybe he's waiting for Peter to come home so he can properly serve the warrant. But it's not Peter that comes home first, it's Ginger and her two thugs, and they lockpick their way into the room. And so Mason witnesses that.
And it occurs to me that, Mason just goes there on his own. He doesn't bring police with him. So he must not have been expecting any trouble at all from Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Or fully expected him to be, I assume, at work. I don't know.
Maybe he wasn't planning to arrest Peter. Maybe he was planning to say, oh, look, I found all this evidence.
Yeah.
You should leave town tonight and never come back. That may be
that
the
actually sounds
sort of
more like it.
deal that he may have been planning to make. So that way he's always got something in his back pocket.
Yeah.
So when Peter arrives, he demands all the money back from Ginger.
Mm-hmm.
She said, well, I don't give refunds. He said,
Yeah.
well, Mason's going to arrest me in the next couple of hours unless I return all the money, and you won't get any more money out of me if I'm in jail.
Yeah.
And Ginger decides to cut her losses. Peter ends up taking some messages from Veronica on the phone, so Ginger has some time to soliloquize a little bit and says, yeah, I think we've got all we can out of Peter, but I think maybe we can get some more money out of Kelly Capwell.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how they leave things.
Yes.
So Ginger has a plan to get the rest of her $250,000 that she needs or wants from Kelly somehow.
So we don't know how she'll do this. One idea is that maybe, she could kidnap her and hold her at ransom maybe and try and extort the money from CC.
CC, I would think, yeah.
That would be one way.
She did say maybe we'll even get more than $250,000. So, I think it seems like CC would probably pay a lot more for Kelly. So
yeah, that was the way that immediately comes to mind. I wouldn't think she would necessarily have anything to blackmail Kelly with.
No, or even to trade information like the way Peter tried to do. Yeah, it does seem like the most reasonable assumption. So with Kelly and Joe switching apartments all over the place, hopefully Ginger won't find them. Maybe they'll end up kidnapping. Has she met Kelly? Oh, she knows who Kelly is, so they won't end up kidnapping Sally Taylor accidentally, unless she sends the thugs to do it and they grab the wrong person.
Now, of course, a really easy way for her to get her money is just to find that coin of Warren's and
That's
take
true.
it to the
That would
nearest coin
solve
exchange. Yeah,
all her problems.
yeah, it would.
She also mentioned at one point that she's not worried about all the stuff Mason knows because it's all history.
Yeah,
It's all she's paid for all those crimes, and she's actually been very careful and done nothing that anyone can pin her on her since then.
Yeah.
So if she kidnaps Kelly, that would be
that would
definitely something.
Yeah.
And I don't think Mason would take too kindly to that.
No.
And I guess we will find out what her plan is when we watch episode 63 of Santa Barbara.
See ya.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We've watched episode 63 of Santa Barbara. Originally aired October 24th, 1984. A gift arrives for Eden. Kelly and Eden and Cece and Mason are having breakfast at the what I call the wicker tables, although looking at them this week, they look like they might be wood carved to look like wicker, which will be even weirder. Because it occurred to me, wicker makes a lot of noise when you sit in it, and you wouldn't want that on the set of a TV show, so it might not actually be wicker. Kelly tells everyone she's called off her engagement to Peter, and then Cece was hoping that meant she was coming home, but she says no, she's not. Eden opens her gift, and it's a bunch of chocolates from Lionel, and she eats them and finds a model gazebo.
And I have to say the chocolates are a better gift than some of the gifts he's been giving her, in my opinion.
Because the next thing that arrives is a weird angel pillow.
Yes.
Or something that we couldn't figure out what it was.
But we knew we wouldn't want it ourselves.
And that came with a note saying for her to meet him at the gazebo at 8:45. And she mentioned she didn't think that he would back down from trying to meet her again. So Lionel is all dressed up, and he tells Augusta he's got to go out to meet with some scientific minds. People who do things like diving and lifting up wrecks and things like that. So she decides to tell him that she's going to have Brick drive her to a concert. And then he says, well, why don't you just invite him to go in with you?
This conversation is our first hint that Augusta and Lionel actually do have a somewhat open relationship.
They actually mention that they have a deal not to fool around inside the house.
Yeah.
So Eden puts on the scarf and meets Lionel at the gazebo. And she's wearing the scarf and the belt that he gave her, which I didn't remember the belt.
No, I didn't remember that
Maybe
either.
that was something we thought was another necklace.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, it's just a coincidence. So she's playing with him, but she tells him basically throughout the meeting she doesn't want any more gifts from him and doesn't want to ever meet him again.
Yeah.
And he agrees. And then he says, till next time.
Yeah, he gives her a little flower, which was growing in the crevice between the two properties. And this seems to have great significance to Lionel. Something about love blooming in unexpected places or something like that. I can't remember the exact metaphor, but anyway, it seems like Lionel's not going to give up, and since Eden has laid down the law and then met him anyway several times now, I would say that they will probably continue on like this for a little while anyway.
At least they're not meeting in the graveyard anymore. So
that's right. This
the
is
gazebo,
a bit nicer.
This is probably the start of all that gazebo stuff I remember from years ago, that it was a popular piece of set where people hung out. Now the kids, speaking of hangouts, come up with some rules for their clubhouse, aka the old motel. They are scrubbing very ineffectively on the countertops. And Jade comes up with various rules, like you need reservations before you can come. And they have to be phoned in. You can't just show up. And Ted comes up with a name for their venture, Frisky Business.
Because, of course, Risky Business would have been a big movie at this time.
And they all wear Ray-Ban sunglasses. And Ted decides to wear them into school as well, which Mr. Bottoms doesn't care for.
No.
They put up a sign advertising the clubhouse, and at least the kids in Mr. Bottoms' class seem to all be into it.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about making reservations. So now Mr. Bottoms wants them all to talk very diligently about the prospect of having children.
Mm-hmm.
And then that lasts about a minute, that conversation. And then Jade wants him to talk about sex, but he skips over that and wants to talk about home ownership.
Mm.
So somehow in 4 minutes, they've glossed over 2 important things. So, yeah, I'm not sure Mr. Bottom's teaching style is really... It's kind of scattershot.
I actually am starting to suspect that Peter Flint was a better teacher at this point. I did actually have a question for you about the clubhouse, because there was one thing that I was a bit confused by, and that was, I think Lincoln and Jade said something about how the money they made from the clubhouse would have to go to the school or something like that, and I was just kind of confused by that.
So they were charging $30 for the reservations, and then Lincoln wanted to donate the money back to the school, and Danny pointed out that he doesn't even go to their school. But I guess because it was supposed to take the place of the clubhouse that Mr. Bottoms shut down at the school, maybe they thought that's where the profit should go. I can't imagine them making any profit, considering they have the rent and all that stuff.
Yeah.
They'd be lucky just to break even.
Yeah, well, yeah.
If that.
So...
But the reservations start pouring in. They take some phone calls. And they also had talked earlier about disguising their voices when they took reservations, which they did. And someone comes to the door, and Danny does an impression of, I forgot who.
Marlon Brando,
Marlon Brando.
In The Godfather.
I guess there's a little slot in the door where the mail comes in, so he takes the guy's reservation through that. Don't know how long they plan to keep their identity secret, if they'll show up on the night, as if they were just other guests, and no one will know who's running it.
Yeah, it'll be kind of interesting to see how they manage this. Yeah,
it's kind of like Veronica Lodge's speakeasy
I know.
on
I
Riverdale.
was thinking about that. Although...
You just watched Riverdale, and I think they've got it a bit more together on Riverdale.
Yeah, Veronica's clubhouse, frankly, is a bit more fun and risque than this one on Santa Barbara.
Promises.
Yeah, exactly.
Ted and Lake can talk about getting closer. So that could happen.
Yeah.
Maybe in the November sweeps, now that we're not getting a wedding.
Yeah.
Ginger comes to Peter with a brilliant plan. She's going to kidnap Kelly Capwell and get $1 million out of Cece. And Peter can have half the money. All he has to do is invite Kelly over that night and then pretend to put up a good fight when they come in to kidnap her. Peter is not interested in doing that. So he's, seems like he's a good guy, more or less. Peter tells Cece that Kelly told him that she called off the engagement. And Peter offers to leave his job if that's what Cece wants, but Cece actually says he can keep it if that's what he wants. So I think Peter played that well.
Yeah.
But then Cece talks about, do you think you can get back together with Kelly? And he says, well, I'll be trying. So Cece's very happy that he's trying. Likes a man who's, what did he say? Determined or something.
Yeah.
Then Peter, Peter's going back and forth in his mind about this kidnap plan. He ends up calling Kelly, or Kelly comes to see him, and he does talk her into coming to his apartment at 9 o'clock. He says it's something important, but he can't talk now. Then he changes his mind again and asks Veronica to track down Kelly so he can talk to her. Tells her to look at Sally's or La Mesa. Ginger calls to make sure he's on track. And he says, oh, Kelly's suspicious. Ginger said that doesn't make any sense. Well, she has nothing to be suspicious of.
Yeah.
You're just trying to, throw a wrench in our plans. And he tells Ginger that he will be there. And then when he hangs up, he says, like hell I will.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Ginger already knows he's not to be relied on by this point.
Yes.
Now Lionel is watching Eden through a telescope. Eden's at the gazebo, so that's
Creepy.
creepy. Warren mentions that a pack of wild coyotes has been spotted. Now, you probably didn't care when he said that, but I think this is something important.
It might be. It does seem like
I
a
have
sort
a
of random thing to say.
memory of something. Warren wants to help with the dive, but Lionel doesn't want him. So this, Warren says this is like my kind of thing, because we've seen him with scuba gear, and he knows he's a lifeguard. So this makes me suspicious about exactly how things are going to go.
Yeah.
Summer tells Lionel, she comes over, I guess is already jealous. Summer tells Lionel how great his lecture went over.
Yeah.
The 6 people that were there. She doesn't say that, but that's all they had there. And mentions that the next lecturer is Richard Peel. And he's a painter, one of the world's leading authorities on the subject of old masters. And Lionel says, after himself, of course. So Lionel appears to have some rivalry or something with Richard Peel.
Yes.
And Summer then gives Warren his coin back, which Kelly gave her. She leaves, and Warren immediately realizes that Kelly switched coins. It's got the wrong serial number on it. It's an S instead of a D series.
Well, I think it was the reverse. Yeah.
And then Warren says it's all Lionel's fault, and rushes out of the room. And the guest says, "What's Lionel's fault?"
And Lionel at least indicates that he doesn't know. So it's possible that he really doesn't know what Warren is talking about, or that he's just covering. I don't know. It looked sincere to me, but
I assume it has something to do with the stuff that was pawned.
Yeah.
Now, if it was Sophia's, I'm wondering if it was something that Lionel gave Sophia and Warren. Maybe something that he'd inscribed, and Warren took it so that the families wouldn't find out about Lionel and Sophia. And because he did say he kind of took the coins as a cover or something,
But it was interesting to me in this scene. I mean, we know that Warren is not actually a collector of fine coins. I mean, that's already been established, and he certainly doesn't have his dad's interest in history and anthropology and that kind of thing. But he obviously has investigated the coins he took enough to know that he, almost immediately after Summer left, that he had been given the wrong coin, and that the coin he stole had a much greater value than the one that Kelly had switched in its place.
Now, I have a suspicion about Richard Peel being the guy that Lionel phoned a couple days ago and says it's time.
Maybe
so my thought that he is a counterfeiter that's going to fake all these paintings for Lionel.
Maybe.
I think that...
Because he is an old masters expert.
Well, he's also a painter who charges $50,000 for one of his paintings.
Yeah, and that's the era of painting that Lionel claims was lost on the Amanda Lockridge.
So, I mean, I assume the paintings may actually be there, but maybe Lionel's thinking just in case any of them are damaged, he can quickly whip up some fakes and no one would know the difference since the real ones are destroyed. So we'll see. That would explain why he wouldn't want Warren along on the dive, because he wouldn't want anyone to witness exactly what shape the paintings are in.
That's right.
So it'll be interesting to see when this dive is going to happen as we head into the end of October. It must be getting colder in Santa Barbara too.
Yeah, even California has a bit of a winter.
Next thing you know, Warren bursts into the museum and demands that Summer tell him where she got this fake coin. Not really a fake coin, but the switched coin. Now, this is crazy to me because he knows it was Kelly who switched it.
Yeah.
Instead of just leaving Summer out of the loop of this and reducing the amount of crazy that he shows to her, he just goes full on attacking her. So,
And she's already, when she came over to the Lockridges to give Warren this coin, it was as she tells him to make a clean break. She's basically had it with him. She's fed up with his obsession over these coins, and she wants it over. She doesn't want a relationship at all with him anymore. So him stomping into the museum and getting all mad about it being the wrong coin, it just reinforces to her that he's got something to hide. Reminds her.
Yeah, it seems to be a very just dangerous thing that he's done by focusing on that.
We are seeing his reckless nature in this, though.
Yeah. So that'll probably undo him. I mean, it's probably something bad's going to happen, I assume. Summer tells Kelly that Warren thinks the coin is the most important thing in the world, as opposed to her. So then Kelly asks her to tell Warren that she tried to get the coin but couldn't. But Summer's had enough of this back and forth stuff. She doesn't want to be in the middle play at all. So. Ginger phones Kelly for another fitting at 8:30. Sally comes in. Sally was at the store getting boxes for her move. So Joe and Kelly even aren't even helping her get the stuff. They're basically forcing her out of her apartment. And then she's like, after work, she has to stop at the grocery store and get some boxes for her things. Yeah. Yeah. And she seems perfectly cheerful about all this. But, yeah, she's really being a bit of a doormat. She tells Kelly that Veronica called, that Peter wanted to talk to her. But she says the dressmaker needs to see her first. So Peter finally reaches Kelly while she's having her dress hemmed again. But, of course, we know Ginger is the dressmaker. And so Peter says, yeah, maybe we can meet next week. I don't need to meet you now. Thinking that's going to save Kelly. But, of course, Ginger is there hemming her dress. So I suspect Kelly's on the verge of being kidnapped. Yeah, and I think for Ginger, really, Peter pulling out of the scheme has just helped her get rid of a weak link, and now she doesn't have to share the money. So yeah, that's true. Probably all good for her. I think she's just going to cut ties with Peter because he's more of a hindrance now, I think. Yeah. Unless he meets another rich girl next year and she comes back for more. But well, we don't know. I mean, obviously the story is going to play out, but at this point, we don't really know what Peter's planning to do about the fact that he still has to pay back all this money or Mason's going to prosecute him. So, I don't know. I mean, we're busy concentrating on this plot line with Ginger and the prospective kidnapping, but I would be interested to know what else Peter's thinking about right now, because he's running out of time to pay back this money. I don't think he spied on any other people in the Capwell presidential suite that he could blackmail in the next day or so. No. I mean, other than asking Cece to borrow some money, which probably wouldn't go over too well, I can't imagine where he could get some money. So I guess we will find out pretty soon when we watch episode 64 of Santa Barbara. Bye. Bye. Welcome back. Hello. We've watched episode 64 of Santa Barbara. Original air date October 25th, 1984. Wow. Santana checks into the hotel in Nice and manages to get a room across the hall from Gina and Brandon. Props her door open so she can hear when they come out. And when they go down to the pool, she doesn't get out of bed in time, and they're already walking down the hall. Yeah. So then she goes downstairs and sees them in the lobby. Gina's talking to the receptionist about something, and Brandon's playing elsewhere in the lobby, but Gina gets angry with him for wandering off too far, and Santana seems kind of upset by the way Gina's talking to Brandon. But I think, Gina's worried that Brandon could get kidnapped, I think Cece may have said something to her about that. So
I think so, because she knows that Stockwell had all these creditors, and she understands that she's there partly because there is an element of danger. So I think that's part of it. One of the things that she discusses with the receptionist at the hotel, the concierge, is that she's going to need a sitter. And Santana overhears this. I think Santana might end up being that sitter.
But Gina knows her, right?
But she's left it to the concierge to find the sitter.
Yeah, so Brandon will know her, though. So, yeah, I don't know how it's going to be weird when Gina
I don't know
realizes
how it will work
Santana's
exactly,
with
but
Brandon.
I really
But
think...
I agree that sounds like it
Yeah.
probably will happen. Peter is referring to himself in the second person as Antonio, and he says his last name is Fiorno, which was what I said the first time Ginger called him Antonio. I said to Diane, I thought, the name Antonio Fiorno just popped into my head, but then I couldn't remember if that was from Santa Barbara or from one of Remington Steele's aliases. So I guess it was.
And I'm sure we'll hear more about that name and any attached criminal record at some point down the line.
Yeah, that's true. Ginger's men burst in to Kelly's dress fitting. Pretty much the same as what they were planning to do with Peter as the witness, but this time it's Ginger as the witness.
Yeah.
They put a blindfold over Kelly, and then once Ginger knows Kelly can't see her, she pulls a needle out of her sewing kit and knocks Kelly out very quickly with whatever's in there.
Yeah.
And they tie her up and shove her in a closet.
Yeah.
Then the tall guy, Rip, apparently, hijacks Peter, who's on his way to the airport. He pops up in the back of Peter's car, and Peter thought he was home free. And he's laughing because he thinks he's thwarted Ginger by telling Kelly not to meet him. So Rip takes him to Ginger. I'm still not sure what that place is where they were.
We're still trying to figure that out.
I mean, it must be Ginger's place in some way, but you wouldn't think she'd want to have her name associated with it. I think she must think that Mason will immediately suspect her if she claims to have witnessed this kidnapping. But Ginger wants to show off Kelly to Peter. And so, of course, he's very worried now for Kelly. And he says, don't be, just go home and wait for, the Capwells to call you to be the go-between, and you can be the hero. And all you have to do is play dumb.
And I think we were getting a little bit of amusement out of Peter, because before he ends up being hauled in by Ginger, he's on the run, and he packs up his office. He's trying to find a flight out of Santa Barbara, which, as we know, is actually quite a challenging thing. But he's packing up his office, and he's doing what so many of us do when we leave a job. He's taking a few extra pens with him, and
he takes a
stapler,
pen holder, and some empty file folders and a hanging file thing. He's just shoving random things off the desk in to fill this box up that he's got. So, he should have grabbed that checkbook, I guess. So then Joe tells Cruz that they're zeroing in on Warren for the killer. And he says he wants Cruz to protect Kelly because he's sort of stuck there at Sally's. And Kelly's almost 2 hours late, so they're getting a bit worried about her. Cruz calls her around to La Mesa and other places and can't find her. And then Sally comes home and says, oh, she went to see her dressmaker. Then Joe has a flashback to meeting Ginger, and Ginger, of course, had the dress in her hand when she first came in and mentioned to Antonio about the fitting. And Joe, I guess, puts two and two together that that's Kelly's dressmaker. So they're trying to get Sally to remember the address. She can only remember the street, which is one of the longest streets in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
But Joe gets Sally to call Mason. So Mason does hear Joe in the background, sort of prompting her with things, but doesn't recognize Joe's voice. And as Sally is describing the dressmaker, Mason realizes it's Ginger too.
Yeah.
And so he gets a call then from Ginger, disguising her voice a little bit.
Yeah.
Saying, oh, I need to speak to C.C. Capwell. Mason says he's not here, but I can take a message. And she says, oh, Kelly's fine, but she won't be unless I get $1 million in 24 hours.
Yeah.
So Mason seems horrified by this thing.
And actually, I think we were also both thinking during this about poor Sally, who, she let Kelly stay with her.
Mm-hmm.
She's being forced to now move out of her own apartment into somewhere else that Kelly's picked out for her. She's having to do it all herself. She's had to go and get her own boxes and everything. And now she's got Joe yelling at her for most of the episode because she can't quite remember this obscure number.
Mm-hmm. She'd written it down and then gone to work and then threw the paper out while at work. And she said it's probably in the dumpster now under a bunch of food. So we just saw Mason on Supernatural today as Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And I think Ginger's crossed over into Psycho territory today. So I'm going to start a new feature after this part of the podcast called Kelly Capwell's Psycho Gazebo. And we'll start logging all of the psychos that appear on Santa Barbara over the course of 8 years and see if we can't fill that gazebo. Summer decides that maybe Kelly is the problem and not Warren. So I don't know how much logic went into this. She just seems a little bit put off by Kelly's attempt to get her to lie to Warren. But I guess she decides she likes Warren, and she's kind of justifying, I think, let's just side with Warren and see how things go.
I have to say, I was actually sort of surprised to see Summer coming back to Warren after going on and on last episode about how she wanted a definitive break from him. And you're right. Her logic in this did seem a little suspect to me, especially since Warren was continuing to be his sort of aggressive, shifty, half-drunken self in this episode.
He didn't really
as well.
dial it back quite enough, in my opinion, after she sort of forgave him.
She says something like, oh, I can see you're a good person. And I'm like, where did you get that during any conversation we've seen you having with Warren?
Just deluding herself because she's interested in Warren. So she says he can trust her. I think she's pretty sure something dodgy's going on.
Yeah.
Obviously, she thinks Warren is doing something dodgy, but I think she wants him to confide in her. So he thinks that she's too close to the Capwells, so he's not going to... and then he tries changing the subject. But Cruz walks in partway through this and starts listening to them. So I think he's hoping to overhear something. Warren tries to change the subject to talking about the museum. And then Summer's trying to push him on back to the other topic and says, oh, weren't you friends with Channing? So Warren concedes that he was and then tries to get the subject back off that. So maybe that's enough, that one little thing, for Cruz to delve in to the mystery of the coins.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That, we didn't hear him say much, really. I mean, there weren't any big reveals in that conversation, but there was just enough, I think, to pique Cruise's interest, where he was talking about his relationship with Channing and so forth.
Now, I assume Cruise knows that Kelly and the gang have the diary of Channing, so maybe Cruise will ask her to search it for references to Warren.
Yeah, well, remember, Joe brought all the things that he had taken from Channing's room to Cruise's houseboat, and they were going through them together, and that's when Cruise saw Dominic. So he is aware of those materials.
Yeah, so I think he is inching closer to, stealing the gold coin is a far cry from murdering Channing, so we've got a long way to go there. The kids count their money after a successful evening at the clubhouse/motel. And the girls are counting the money. The guys have finished cleaning all the rooms. So I guess they're just, the motel's a big free-for-all, and private party rooms going on everywhere.
I wouldn't bet on those rooms being very clean.
I know, we saw the one that that Lincoln and Ted slept in that one night. So there's some suspicious noises coming from the air conditioning at one point. So the guys goes to check it out, and during that point, Jade goes to borrow Lincoln's lipstick and discovers her birth control pills in her purse, and this excites Jade greatly. She asks Lincoln when the big night is, and Lincoln says she hasn't got anything planned, and Jade says, let's make it next Friday, and Lincoln says no, she doesn't want to plan anything.
Sex by committee.
Yeah. So then later Ted and Lincoln are alone and talk about what a beautiful couple Charles and Diana make. So they talk about Charles and Diana at some length. Ted decides they're a better couple. And then they talk about going somewhere to be alone. So
I wonder if that noise in the air conditioner will turn out to be anything, if there's someone maybe hiding in the hotel.
It's wild coyotes.
Or maybe it's Mason's mom or someone like that.
Maybe someone's installed a two-way mirror in the motel.
Maybe that's it.
And that is kind of a low-key story point to end on, but that's just how my summary went. So I was going to try to end on the excitement of the kidnapping, but Cruise was jumping all around town, and there was no way to have Cruise and then Warren and then Kelly and then Cruise again without it being a circle. And one thing that we did notice several times during the episode was the amount of music that was playing at the State Street restaurants. We heard Running with the Night.
Yep.
Pepsi Feels So Right, isn't that the next line? And then later we heard All Night Long, Lionel Richie. And then later on, after the boys come back from searching the hotel for the mystery sounds, they decide it's a ghost, and then we hear the theme from Ghostbusters. So that's probably the reason some of these episodes tend to get yanked off the internet so often, that I grab them whenever I can.
Yeah, we're getting a really nice taste of early 80s pop culture. Yeah, not just with the fashions, which are very 80s, but also with the music and the various references.
This week's spotlight will be on Paul Burke, of course, who left over the weekend, I guess. So we will be back after 65 Friday episode. We've gone through another week of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
See ya.
Kelly Capwell's gonna die. So is Peter Flint. I'm toying with the idea of a double ceremony.
Kelly Capwell's Psycho Gazebo welcomes Ginger Jones.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We watched episode 65 of Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
Originally aired October 26, 1984. In Nice, Santana pretends to run into Gina in the lobby of the hotel. They make some small talk, and when Gina's told the babysitter will be late, Santana says, "Oh, you need a babysitter? I can watch Brandon. I've just bought this new dominoes game." So Gina agrees.
No, I'm not sure quite how Santana knew that
Brandon likes dominoes.
Was that brought up in their brief conversations earlier?
I mean, it must have been, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember it. But she bought that game specifically so that she could have it when she ran into them.
Mm-hmm.
So Gina says, "Okay, well, you can spend the afternoon with Santana, but Santana, feel free to pass him off to the babysitter if you get tired of him."
Yeah.
So she and her date leave to go to the casino, and then Santana gets rid of the babysitter, and they go up to the room to play dominoes. And they build houses out of the dominoes, so that's not really part of the game as far as I'm aware. And then Brandon suggests they jump up high, and then when they land, the tremor will topple the domino houses like a mini earthquake.
Now, I have to say, Santana isn't really dressed for any of this. She's got her heels and a suit on, and is immaculately made up. So she's certainly not dressed like someone who's going to be babysitting.
It's good that they're not out playing, catch or something.
Yeah, yeah. But they do have a lovely long hug at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Eden tells Cece that she thinks the gazebo should stay where it is. Now, she says that's, where it was designed to be. So I don't know if she just has a romantic notions about it, or if she thinks that'll be a nice dig at Santana.
Well, and I think, too, it's near the Lockridge property, and although she's sent Lionel on his way, I don't know how serious she is. I think she's still intrigued by him. I don't think she would really mind seeing him again, and they had a rather interesting encounter there, so I don't think she would mind running into Lionel again at the
I think if the gazebo were moved, it would be in the line of sight of both the Lockridge and the
Yeah,
Capwell house.
exactly.
It wouldn't be very good at all for clandestine meetings.
No.
So Ginger is on the phone with Mason and wants $1 million. Mason says that would be impossible to raise in 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Then he has a tap put on all the phones. Sally calls, and Mason tells her that Kelly's been kidnapped. And with Joe's prompting off screen, she suggests that it's the dressmaker who's responsible, and Mason agrees because he's pretty much figured out that's Ginger. Ted gets off the phone and says, "Rats! Some guy named Antonio Fiorno has booked the presidential suite out from under us."
I'm wondering if that will be at all significant later, that they know this full name and it's attached to the presidential suite.
Maybe
and there's
Ted will mention it to Mason.
Yeah, there's only
and Mason will say, "No one's
booked.
allowed to book that suite but family."
Yeah.
That could be. They decide to find somewhere else to have sex. He calls home to tell Cece he's going to be out all night, and then it's when Mason tells him that Kelly's been kidnapped. So he tosses Lincoln into the Jeep rather abruptly and says, "We got to get home."
And I was thinking as I was watching this scene that probably most people under the age of 25 would not really understand why they spent so long in that scene looking for a dime for the payphone. But that is how it was back in 1984.
That is how communication was done between people in different locations. Cruz bursts into Peter's apartment and demands to know where Kelly is. He's pretty rough with him. Antonio plays dumb, but Cruz says, "Joe told me everything, Antonio Fiorno." Now that's interesting because I don't think the last name was mentioned during that Ginger, Joe, Peter encounter. Because otherwise...
Don't think so.
It
Now,
was just
mind you, we
mentioned
didn't
yesterday.
see it all. Like, we saw bits of it,
That's
right?
possible. And also, maybe Cruz started investigating based on just the name Antonio and got Fiorno from his CIA investigations.
Well, one thing I think that's becoming clear over the course of this show is just how good a spy Cruz really is. I mean, he knew all about Santana's baby just
within
from
a
his
day.
brief conversation with her and doing a little bit of investigating, poking around in Acapulco a little bit. And he's put things together really quickly about Peter. And I wouldn't be surprised if that little snippet of conversation he overheard between Warren and Summer yesterday will actually get him moving in various investigative directions as well. So we're seeing just how good an investigator he is. And by contrast, we're seeing just how many holes there tends to be in Mason's investigations.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, Mason never did find out who called in that other search and rescue team that he said he was going to find out when Joe was missing. Antonio says he doesn't think Ginger has anything to do with it, because Cruz is already thinking it's the two of them working together. Cruz ends up pushing him into a chair and threatening him if anything happens to Kelly. Peter goes to the Capwell mansion. Ginger calls there and plays Cece a tape of Kelly's voice. She demands that Peter deliver the $1 million. And Mason manages to get a trace on the call to a phone booth. Cece wonders why Peter. That prompts Mason to bring up the fact that he's lent Peter $50,000 recently and that he's written a whole lot of checks on the real estate account. Cece says, we can deal with Peter later.
Yeah, so complete 180 turn.
Yeah, he welcomed Peter in 20 seconds earlier. Now he says, we can deal with you later. Peter's like, oh, I'm just as worried about Kelly as you guys. So I think he needs to play it that way. There's no other way for Peter to play it, but I don't know anything that's going on. And, that was always going to be a dodgy bit. Why would Ginger insist it's Peter?
Also, I just noticed a little bit of semantic change there in that Mason has now lent Peter that money. Was it a loan before, or was it giving
a payment
Peter? For the information?
Yes, well, maybe I misspoke it. Unless
No,
you
he did. I did notice that. So it seems like possibly Mason is changing the terms of that agreement as well. Maybe he doesn't feel he quite got his $50,000 worth out of the bit of information Peter gave him.
Right, he hasn't really done too much investigation about Brandon lately, and now this Kelly thing is going to divert him for one assumes a few days. Now Cruz goes to visit Joe, and Joe tells Cruz he thinks Peter's behind the kidnapping. He wants Cruz to call Dominic and set up a meeting. So Cruz does that. Dominic comes to the houseboat and is happy to discover that Joe is alive. So happy that she drops her deep voice accent and just delivers a couple lines in her own voice. But then she's immediately horrified to find out that Kelly's been kidnapped. Now Joe wonders if Dominic knows Ginger's full address, because he knows she's been, following all the various people around, and maybe knows. But before he can get the info, Dominic starts to cry and says, "First Channing and now Kelly. Why Kelly too?" Yeah. So
I really think this strengthens the case for Dominic being Sophia.
Cece says, "This is the worst night of my life." So this seems to be worse than the night Channing got shot.
I know, that was the first thought I was thinking.
Now Mason's like, okay, now I'm third in the queue behind Kelly and Channing.
Well, maybe behind Eden and Ted too. We don't know.
A clipping of Kelly's hair arrives. They had been taunting Kelly about, isn't the appropriate thing to cut off your ear? But looks like they went with some hair. Augusta visits Sally, as she said she was going to do. She obviously wants to try and find that coin. Now this is interesting because she notices Joe's boots, which Sally's trying to hide by standing in front of them. And Sally says, "Oh, yes, they belong to my boyfriend." And she said, "I thought you moved out." So somehow Augusta has this information that Sally... And I guess Sally, even though the place is still full of her stuff, I guess Sally's moved out now and just hanging out there.
She's just let them have all her stuff, too.
Yeah. She really ships Joe and Kelly.
But yeah, Augusta has obviously been keeping tabs. I mean, that's what it shows, that she's been keeping tabs on Kelly's situation.
So then she says, "Oh yeah, my boyfriend and I came to visit." And then Augusta says, "And he left without his shoes." So really, Sally's really treading water, trying to keep this lie about the boots alive.
But most people wouldn't even have dignified any of Augusta's questions with an answer. Because it's like, this is my house. I can do whatever I want. I can have whoever I want. Who are you? Go away.
Sitting here.
No one with any kind of self-esteem would answer any of Augusta's questions, as far as I'm concerned.
Then Augusta's thinking, yeah, they're probably a new lover of Kelly's. That's what Augusta says.
So it's interesting that her mind is kind of approaching this the same way as Peter's, in that Kelly must have a new love interest. It shows that they are very firmly convinced that Joe is dead. It doesn't even occur to them that Joe could possibly be alive.
Augusta tells Brick, she's confirmed with him that his mother was in the circus, and Brick was like, "Well, why wouldn't it be? I told you that." So he finds it sad that Augusta assumes people are lying when they talk to her. Brick is doing a bookkeeping test for Minx, and Augusta's keeping him from completing his timed task. Lakin and Ted arrive to just drop off Lakin, but also let them know Kelly's been kidnapped. Brick returns to say he's passed his test, so we don't actually see Minx in this episode. Augusta says she thinks Minx is playing a game with them all, and that Brick is the pawn. Then she mentions to Kelly there's a man staying at Kelly's place. And to Lakin, yeah. And Lakin suggests it's probably Peter, but Augusta says, "Oh no, that's over with." And then Lakin, as she has before, gets really annoyed with all this gossip. And she says she doesn't care if Kelly has 50 boyfriends. Which kind of throws off Augusta for a second. Now Rip is saying it's getting annoying to have to deal with Kelly, and Ginger says that Kelly Capwell is going to die. And so is Peter Flint. I'm thinking of toying with the idea of having a double ceremony.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to look forward to as soon as, I guess, Ginger gets the money. She's going to do away with both of them. So
that's her plan, anyway.
We've got some an exciting week ahead of us.
Just some thoughts about that exchange between Augusta and Brick. That does indicate to me that Minx really didn't want to hire Amy for the bookkeeping job, or at least she's looking at other options. If she's got Brick practicing bookkeeping himself.
I know, I was thinking, she's clearly got him fast-tracked to take over Lionel's job.
Well,
she's chopping his way up the ladder.
And that was the other thing. I think perhaps Augusta is very much misreading this if she thinks that Brick is the pawn. I think that Minx is setting Brick up to be the knight.
Yep. And I don't know how long it'll be before the family finds out what's really going on there.
And I would really like to know more about Brick's connections with the Lockridges. That there is a reason, which he doesn't know himself. No one knows except Minx at this point, that he was identified as the person to do this. So I want to find out more about that.
Do you have any guesses?
I feel like he might be some kind of distant relative. Or maybe a descendant of some figure in Minx's past.
Seems reasonable. Should offer a $5 reward for your guesses on that. Put $1,000 down. Guess what Brick's secret is. Hey, it's daylight savings time this weekend in Santa Barbara World, 1984. So set your clocks back. And we'll be back next week with week what are we on? Week 14? Week 14 of Santa Barbara. End of October, going into November. So, see you then.
See ya.
Attention, please! This is C.C. Capwell!
I want you all to set your clocks back 1 hour this weekend.
I repeat!
1 hour.
I don't want any lives lost in this.
Get out of my sight, you miserable has-been.